Hey, everybody, welcome to our Wednesday night Bible study. This is for December the 2nd. Can you believe that? Can you believe that we're already in the month of December and we're about to turn the corner into 2021? That's hard to believe. I just cannot believe this year has gone like that. Hey, I'm not in my normal spot. I know several of you have mentioned you enjoy my being on the porch. The weather was really rainy and cold this week, and so I opted for doing it here. It was a little warmer and drier inside the office. I'm hoping if the weather can come back out, I'd rather be sitting on the porch at the house. I would just really enjoy doing it there. But if not, this is an option, and I hope you don't mind. Bible study is Bible study, right? Regardless of where I'm at. But I'll try to get back to the porch as soon as I can. Thanks for tuning in. If you're visiting with us tonight, I have a couple of requests. If you're tuning in for the first time tonight, or maybe you're tuning in but you've never really engaged our posts before, number one, if you are visiting this video on YouTube, can we get you to do two things at the very beginning? First of all, down below the video, there is a thumbs up and thumbs down. Please don't give us a thumbs down. Give us a thumbs up. Tell us that you like the video. And what that's going to do, it tells us that you were watching the video, that you were engaged in the video. But don't be afraid either. If you have some constructive criticism or a comment, please let us know, and we'd love to hear from you. Also, below the video box, there's a little red tab, sort of a square, that's probably a rectangle, and it has white letters that says subscribe. If you'll subscribe to our video, we would very much appreciate that. Also, you will get notifications of new videos that we post on YouTube. And we're not monetized. We don't get money from our videos. We wouldn't ever do that because this is paid for by the congregation. All of whatever expenses go into this, and it's not much to do a YouTube video. This is a work of North Hamilton, so it's nothing out of pocket for you. However, the more subscriptions we get, the better quality video we can publish, and we gain features, publishing features. So if you'll do that, that would help us out a lot. If you're on Facebook, watching us on Facebook, give us a thumbs up. Let us know again that you were present, that you were here for the video, and then share the video so that your friends and family members, anybody connected with you or to you on Facebook, can view the video. And that would be a great way of sharing what we're doing in these videos at North Hamilton. So we would very much appreciate you sharing our videos so that others can benefit from it as well. We have been engaged for several months now in a study of angels and demons. Angels and demons. And this was by request. I asked for feedback. I said, please, if there's anything that you want to study, that you would be very helpful, that you're curious about, that you want to delve into. And we had some feedback. We had several, probably a handful of requests for the subject of angels, to know what angels do, who they are. And we're gonna continue our study on demons, because I think demons is a complement to the study of angels. And right now our study of demons has not been as long. It's not as Obviously, we don't have as much information on demons. We have some, though, and we are looking at the identity of demons, the identity of demons. We're trying to figure out who they are. And last week we had a discussion of two theories that they don't work. I don't think they're scriptural theories. They don't harmonize with what the Bible teaches. These were the theories that there was a pre-Adamic race of people, and they were evil and wicked, and God cleansed the earth and wiped the earth clean of those, but those people returned as demons, and it just doesn't hold up to investigation. The second is the theory that in Genesis 6, that angels and women cohabitated with each other, and the product of the angel-women combination was demons. But that's not in Genesis 6 either. So I think either of those theories both fall flat in light of Scripture. They're not right. So that brings us to the two remaining theories. And we're going to be here a few weeks because there's a lot to these. And I'm going to say up front, either I know brethren who believe either of these. I'm fine with either. I mean, I have my own view. Obviously, I'm not gonna be dogmatic about it because I think it's a judgment matter. But it's interesting, right? And the Bible gives us information to think through and try to put our heads together and maybe come to some sort of conclusion about it. I mean, I think there are things that we have to agree on. That demon possession was real in the first century. Demons were real. Jesus cast them out. But beyond that, I'm not, some things like they were spirits. They're called spirits. We can't disagree on what objective matters. But when it comes to matters of opinion, where we're just having to do our best, there's some room. Okay, so here's the third thing, and this is the third opinion. It's one of the two I think you could seriously consider as an option, and that is that demons are the departed spirits of people. Okay, so the other option is going to be that demons were fallen angels, wicked angels. But this theory says they weren't angels at all. They're the actual souls, departed spirits of wicked men, wicked people. In the words of one person, quote, the demons of paganism, Judaism, and Christianity were the ghosts of dead men, dead people. Okay, so that's a widely held opinion by some people. So let's explore that. Now, here's a couple of things worth considering. What you can take this with a grain of salt. You don't have to believe any of this. It doesn't mean it's true. It's just conjecture, okay? When you look at pagan authors, when you look at people whose works are worth considering, and those works that are still available for consideration today, all of those people, I'm going to list some of these so you'll know who I'm talking about. All of those folks that would be considered a pagan author with any value to it, all of them considered demons to be the departed spirits of wicked people, of wicked men. They expressed their opinion that demons were ghosts of dead people. Hesiod is one of those. Celsus is another. Many of the poets of, and this would be in a time really genuinely before Jesus was around. It would be in a sort of in the philosophical period, in the BC period. Many of the historians, a lot of the philosophers did this. And they believed that demons were the ghosts of dead people. That's worth considering. There were some Jewish historians like Josephus and Philo who also believed the same thing. And very likely, Josephus and Philo were very heavily influenced by those previous philosophers. A lot of first century historians believed what the philosophers believed. So that's also worth considering. But for example, here's Josephus. I'm reading a quote from Josephus. So Josephus says, demons are the spirits of wicked men who enter into living men and destroy them unless they are so happy as to meet with speedy relief. Then Philo, and some of you may have some of the works of Philo. I've got some works of Philo, and he was a firm believer in that. He said, quote, Philo, the souls of dead men are called demons. Now that doesn't mean it's so, but it's worth considering, right? So, if some of these people offer some information, you certainly want to consider it. Many of the church fathers believed exactly the same thing. Now, church fathers, it doesn't mean they were all members of the church, but it does mean that they wrote mostly post-first century history. This is uninspired history. They weren't inspired writers of church history. They're just historians who reflected on a religious history, mostly post-first century. One of those people is Justin Martyr. You may have heard of Justin Martyr. He said, quote, those who are seized and tormented by the souls of the dead men, whom are called demons, and madmen. So Justin Martyr believed that. He believed that when you're looking at the issue of demons, you're talking about departed spirits of wicked people. You have sometimes people who wrote collective works. They would assess the writings of church fathers. He said there's a fellow by the name of Lardner. When he did a lot of historical research into the church fathers, and he says, and I'm going to quote from him: "The notion of demons or the souls of dead men having power over living men was universally prevalent among the heathen of those times and believed by many Christians." Take that for what it's worth. Again, you can believe it or not, and we're going to examine some of these arguments in just a moment to see if they hold up or not. Now, as for the New Testament, it is asserted by those who believe that demons are the departed spirits of wicked people. They say that it is the implied belief of the preachers and the apostles and the teachers of Jesus in the New Testament. They say when you read the New Testament, it's pretty plain that they believed this to be the case. And how do they make that claim? Well, it's based on this, and here is the rule. And I'm going to quote from a guy who he lived in the 1800s. He was a religious guy, historian, and excuse me. I'm recording in the morning, and I like to have some coffee to soothe my throat. So sorry for that. So here's what this fellow said. He said, "Every word not specifically explained or defined in a particular sense by any standard writer of any particular age and country is to be taken and applied in the current or commonly received signification of that country and age in which the writer lived and wrote." Now here's what he's saying. He says, unless Jesus or the apostles came along and re-explained a word, then we're bound to believe that Jesus and the apostles accepted the commonly applied definition of that term. You pick a term, whatever it is. Unless they came back and said, we're redefining that term, here's the new definition of that term, we're left to say whatever the standing definition was post-first century, intertestamental time period, writings of the philosophers, we accept that as the definition of the term. That's how some say, okay, well, the philosophers believe that demons were the departed spirits of wicked people, and they say the New Testament never redefined it. Okay, so that's the argument. Now, demon, the word demon, or demons, we have, I think, around 75 to 80 uses of that in the New Testament. There's only one Satan, right? So there's only one prince of demons, but there were many demons, right? So Matthew 12:24 speaks of that. Matthew 12, verse 24, Jesus has healed a blind and mute man. He's blind and mute because he's demon-possessed. Down in verse 24, when the Pharisees heard it, they said, "This fellow does not cast out demons except by Beelzebub, the ruler of demons." Right? So there are demons, not just one, but many demons. And the question is, of course, who are they? And the argument would be, well, see, the New Testament never redefines that. So whatever the definition was that was standing in place linguistically at the time of the New Testament's writing, that would be the definition that stands for that. It's also argued that there's no question in the argument. Okay, no question. It doesn't mean you can't have a question. It means in the mind of those who advocate for this that there were other terms that were defined by the understanding of the day, just like they believed demons were. For example, you read this term Messiah in the New Testament. It was never redefined. The common understanding was applied in the New Testament. The word prophet was never redefined. It was allowed to stand in the New Testament. The word priest was never redefined. It was allowed to stand in the New Testament. The same with elder and deacon. There was no new redefinition of that. Those terms were used in sort of pretty common understandings. Altar, sacrifice, all of those terms are thrown out as evidence of the fact that if they weren't redefined, then whatever the common understanding was is the definition that we should assume for the term. So the argument is, then why should anybody accept the term? Why should anyone accept the term demon otherwise, right? So why should we accept it to be other than what was universally accepted as? And I don't know if it's universally accepted, but a lot of people believed it at the time. It's also suggested. Okay, these are arguments. Please understand. I'm making the case in the mouth of the voice of the advocates of that. It's also suggested that the word demon is not capable of being used interchangeably with the term angel. Okay, so one argument is that the word was never redefined. The other argument is you really can't use that term demon interchangeably with angel. And they say that because, and we'll look at some of those in just a moment, angels are never said to have entered into anybody or anything. We'll examine that. They say angels have no affection for bodies of any sort, either as habitations or vehicles for action. We'll see. They say angels have no predilection for tombs. You know, they have no preference for tombs or monuments of the dead, and yet demons seem to have those. So they say you can't really use those terms interchangeably. Contrary-wise, demons have entered into human bodies. We have evidence of that, and into the bodies of inferior creatures. In fact, in Matthew 12, I just have my Bible open in Matthew 12. If we drop down and look in verse 43 and following, here's an example of demons entering human bodies. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, there's the human body, he goes through dry places seeking rest and finds none. Then he says, I will return to my house from which I came. When he comes, he finds it empty, swept, and put in order. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. Those would be demons. And they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. So shall it be with this wicked generation. So demons have entered into people. They enter in fact, the Bible says they dwell there. They do that. So demons do enter human bodies, and they do enter inferior creatures. In Matthew chapter 8, just a few chapters back, in verse 31, the Bible says the demons begged Jesus, him would be Jesus there, if you cast us out, permit us to go away into the herd of swine. Remember that story? And he said, go. And so they, when they had come out, they went into the herd of swine, and suddenly the whole herd of swine ran violently down into the steep place into the sea and perished in the water. So, yeah, demons do enter the bodies of human beings, and they do enter the bodies of inferior creatures. They do that. They've done it. And they say, you see, that's you can't use those terms interchangeably, and you've got to look at the fact that angels apparently have never been said to do that. Also, part of the argument is the idea that demons demonstrate an unusual affection for human bodies. They really do seem, according to the argument, to desire human bodies as both vehicles of action and places of habitation. They seem to do that. In fact, many times in the Bible, we actually have the term possessed. In Mark 1:32, we have those who were possessed of demons. In Mark 9:32, we have those who were possessed by demons. And to possessed means to be brought under the power of a demon. So, does that argument hold true? It sounds reasonable, right? Another facet, and we're going to look at all of these, okay? Again, please understand at this point, I'm throwing the argument out there. This is a possibility. It suggested that demons also demonstrated a peculiar fondness for tombs and for monuments of the dead. They seem to hang around cemeteries, so to speak. In fact, in Matthew 8, we're just in Matthew 8, verse 28, when he had come to the other side, to the country of the Gergesenes, there met him 2 demon-possessed men coming out of the tombs. Is that proof that demons are the departed spirits of wicked people? Why did demoniacs dwell in the tombs? Why were they there? Would that not go right along with the fact that demons are the departed spirits of wicked men? Would they not have an effect? That's where their bodies were. Would they not want to be there? Their old bodies were in that exact location, possibly, and they chose to be there because they were trying to be near their body. That's a compelling argument. It's very difficult to sort of turn the other cheek and turn away on that, because it's a pretty compelling piece of evidence. And then there's another one, 1 Timothy 4, verse 1. If you remember that passage, Paul says, in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of demons. And so it suggested that the doctrines of demons is proof that demons were actually the spirits or ghosts of men, because it is suggested that it was people who taught those things, and yet here they're called demons, and so demons must be the departed spirits of wicked men. So let's check our time. All right, so we're not going to be able to make it all the way through this in one setting, but let's now review the arguments. Does this argument hold water, that demons are the departed spirits of wicked men? Okay. Now I want to say up front, I think it's a fascinating theory, and I think it's a very compelling theory about the identity of demons. It is worth considering. And there are things, and it's not my goal to try to explain it away. I just want to try to be reasonable and offer a counterpoint for it. And if you believe this, please understand, I'm not trying to renounce what you believe, because it is just an opinion. It is a good opinion. It is a very strong opinion about the identity of demons. But I just want us to think through this for a moment. So let's review the theory as much as we can, and we'll try to finish it up next week with a sort of a finale on this theory, on this possibility, and then we'll get into the fourth theory, which is that they're fallen angels. And it's not to say there aren't problems with that too. And I guess it's that way because we're not meant to really know. We can study, and that's what we're doing. We're just studying right now. Okay, so let's take the issue of pagan authors. All right, so let's say, and the idea is the consensus, right? If you take a consensus of pagan authors and you look at what pagan writers were saying about the subject of demons, they believed that demons are the departed spirits of wicked men. I would say, as a counterpoint, just for consideration, do we consider pagan authors a concrete, objective source of authority? It's not to say that they aren't helpful in some ways. And here's why I would say that. The people who wrote those things, whatever things they're saying, whatever writings that those Greek historians are making, whatever writings that Celsus and other writers are making at that point, even if you're talking about Greek philosophers, whatever they're doing, those people are writing prior to the 1st century. They're writing prior to the phenomenon of demon possession. And remember, we said that in the Old Testament, you don't really have a whole lot of references to demons, and you certainly don't really have any references to demon possession. So if a person decides that he's going to write about a demon, right? They're going to write about demons. And the fact that demons existed, we read it in the Old Testament. There's literature, there's inspired literature that gives us, it talks about demons. But you don't have reference to demon possession. So if they're saying that we know definitively prior to the phenomenon of demon possession what the identity of a demon is, when it really hadn't been revealed, does that pagan writer really serve as a source of authority? Those are my 2 cents on that. Whatever writing was done in the 1st century or post-1st century by uninspired writers is mostly written from a position influenced by paganism, which would be anti-Christian, which would assume a position that is essentially anti-Christian. They're not going to just necessarily agree with what was published by Christians. Their view of the spiritual realm was built on pagan beliefs. You have a lot of Gnostic influence in the 1st century. You have a lot of influences from Greek ideas that would have influenced the way they thought about things. So does that serve as a source of authority? Is that definitively, what we use to say this is the case? Now, as for Josephus or Philo, right? If you pull some of these historical works, I've got a number of those guys on this side of my office, my historical side. I've got a lot of those guys up there. If you look at those guys, you look at early post first century writers like the church fathers, the patristic writers as they're called. They make assertions. They have opinions. That doesn't mean their opinions are correct. We have to take their opinions with a grain of salt. A lot of those people, when they wrote on subjects like that, wrote based on popular ideas of the day. Their assertions are not to be confused with what explicit, absolute definitions might be provided or what implications might be provided in inspired literature, in the Bible. So we have to be really careful when we look at outside sources. It's not to say that you can't consider it, because when you've got that much talk and that much conjecture and that much literature on the subject, it's worth considering. I'm not saying to dismiss the theory. I'm just saying it's, take it for what it is. Now to the claim. The claim is that every single word that is not explained is to be taken in its commonly received signification. In other words, if you read a term in the Bible and the Bible writer does not specifically re-explain the term, then we are required to understand it the way that people understood it in the time before Jesus, in the intertestamental period prior to that, or in common first century understanding. And is that true? Now, I'll tell you, there's some merit to that, right? There's some merit to that law. And there are times when we see Jesus redefining a term, giving it a better or special significance that it did not have prior to his arrival in the scene of history. I'll give you an example of that. We can probably think of one together, can't we? Do you remember how Jesus used the term hell? And I know that in the King James, and I love the King James. Don't misunderstand me to be criticizing King James. I love King James, although I use the New King James and a lot of the ESV. I just think you have terms that might be better defined in some areas. The King James uses the term hell, and that might be the term Hades, or it might be the term Gehenna. So you really can't tell. You do get, in the New King James, it'll use the term Hades for that term, and then it will use the term hell for Gehenna. And we've talked about it before. If you hear the term hell, the term Gehenna, you know that Jesus applies a sense to it that wasn't given to it. I mean, Gehenna was a trash heap outside of Jerusalem. It burned trash, refuse. They'd throw it in there and burn it and try to cut down on the disease that would come out of it. And Jesus comes along and he starts giving it an eternal sense, an everlasting sense, a forever sense that it did not have before. In Mark 9, you have this long section where Jesus would say, where the fire is not quenched and the worm does not die, and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, and it's just this profound, epic treatment of that subject. Well, that's a definition that didn't have before Jesus came along and redefined the term. So if the argument is that if it has new significance, the New Testament will give it that new significance. That is a very compelling argument. It is worth considering. Okay, so I want you to understand. I think when someone says, I believe that demons are the departed spirits of wicked men, I'm saying, me, before I'm dismissive of that, I'd better give that some serious thought, because this is a very, very compelling argument. Here's my, and this is just me throwing something out, okay? That argument only works if we are asserting that Jesus intentionally did not define the identity of demons because that generation already knew what the definition was. Is it entirely a possibility? Is it just possible that demons aren't really specifically identified and weren't by Jesus because it's just not essential information? Is it possible that Jesus did not define demons because, and I mean specifically, that he didn't just offer a specific redefinition because it just wasn't as important as believing that demons were real? In Deuteronomy 29, there's the statement that the secret things belong to the Lord our God. Maybe that's one of those secret things, and we're not meant to really read too much into it except to just believe in the first century phenomenon of demon possession and God's power over them. Maybe that's what we're supposed to believe. and that the identity is really one of those secret things that's been withheld. And we can talk about it, and we can have an enjoyable time really digging in deep and exploring and trying to stretch our minds a little bit. And I think that's what we're doing right now, but it doesn't mean that we have definitive definitions, okay? Boy, time has really gone quickly. I see that we're 30 minutes into it. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put a peg in this here. I want to give you something to think about. Something to think about. And that is a couple of arguments that you may want to explore before we get to those. And I'm going to mark my notes right here. I'm going to put a little mark right there to know that's where we're going to start at. If demons are just the departed spirits of wicked men, didn't Jesus prove his ability over human beings in so many ways, right? If they are the departed spirits of wicked men, in what way did Jesus ever demonstrate his power over angels? If demons are not angels, how did he ever do that? And didn't Jesus demonstrate while he was on the earth his power over everything? If they were not angels, where did he demonstrate his power over angels? And in Luke 16 verses 19 through 31, do we get a sense in that passage that once a person dies, that they're in Hades, they're in the Hadean realm, they're not coming out of the Hadean realm? I want you to consider that. We're going to talk about that next week. There's some things I want to consider, and I want you to understand. I want to make it very clear. This is a really viable argument. Okay, so it's entirely possible that demons are the departed spirits of wicked people. It's possible, and we're just kind of racking our brains and stretching our minds and trying to be really diligent Bible students. Okay, so if you believe this, it's a really good theory. It's a great theory. It is a very viable theory about demons, but there may be another worth considering, just like this one is worth considering for me. I hope you're enjoying the study. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this maybe caused us to dig deep a little bit. Look at those things, and we're going to explore that a little bit next week. Please be safe. If you're not feeling well right now, be well. There's a lot of folks we have at North Hamilton that are kind of under the weather right now. I miss you guys. Hopefully in a few weeks we'll be back together. We'll be whole, and we'll be moving forward, and hopefully 2021 is going to be a better year. I love you guys. I'll see you next time. Thank you.